Hi everyone, welcome to Psychedelic Conversations. This is your hub for engaging in deep conversations around serotonergic hallucinogens that alter perceptions, affect cognitive processes, induce mystical and spiritual experiences. Enjoy the show. Hi everyone, welcome to Psychedelic Conversations podcast. This is your hub for engaging in deep subjects around psychedelics and their effects on our cognitive processes and the way they induce mystical and spiritual experiences. So today I have with us Derek Januszewski. I hope I said that correctly. Derek, welcome. Great to have you.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So Derek is the founder of the Pachamama Sanctuary. He's from the US and he has a very long field experience with the psychedelic, working with psychedelics and their healing effects. So we're going to go deep into that conversation with his journey and also his background, a little bit of his background in how he crossed paths with these medicines and how he now became a facilitator also for other people on the same path. So Derek, please tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, and then we can take on from there.
Great. So, I like to kind of start from the beginning, usually when I tell my story. And where it started was when I was a kid, I was abused a lot. From physically to mentally, emotionally, sexually, and I was under a tremendous amount of abuse as a kid. I lived in neighborhoods where I was the only white kid, so I would get beat up all the time, and that was up until fourth grade, I was in Springfield, Massachusetts. Only white kid in my school. That's not true. There was one other one. So I was one of two white kids in my school. I was, my babysitters were sexually abusing me. My mom was hurting me a lot. She broke a couple of bones, wooden spoons over me, all that kind of stuff. Then moved to Florida, where again I was the only white kid in another neighborhood. I was in Jacksonville, Florida, a really tough part of Jacksonville, Florida, where again I was getting beat up, and again my mom was she's an alcoholic, still is, and and she would get me babysitters that again I was being molested by my babysitters again, and so came back to Massachusetts for high school, which was relatively normal, except my dad really wasn't around a lot because he worked a ton. Didn't really get along with the kids here either, because I guess I was just trained to not really get along with the people around me, or they weren't my tribe. I don't know. So made a pit stop in college where I learned to drink, and that was a 1 year. That was a 1 year thing, and until I flunked out, went back to Florida, moved back in with my mom, because I didn't really connect the dots that's where all the abuse was coming from. So got married, had 3 kids, and then at that point, like I was doing really well in life. I owned 12 houses. I was doing really well according to all the metrics, money, and a house and a family, and all of these things. But all of a sudden, something grabbed me, and it was like this obsessive compulsive behavior. It started with work, and it led into video games and poker and gambling, and that created separation in my marriage, which ended up in divorce. And a couple of days after I moved into my new place, out, separating from my wife because it got really tumultuous, a guy showed up, and I don't know if I should call him a friend. A guy showed up with an ounce of cocaine and said, "This will make you feel better. Let's do this." And so that started me on a 10-year run of using cocaine, crack, led me, I used other things a little bit, but cocaine was my God for a long time. And it got worse and worse. I came out of it a little bit, but it was just kind of white knuckling it. I got into a relationship initially that was relatively healthy, but that degraded too. And then I started using more and more. That relationship really got toxic. The relationship was toxic, and how could it not be? You had an addict in it, so then I did something really bad. I left my son, who was 16 at the time. I was supposed to give him a ride to the airport. He was supposed to fly to Spain for 7 weeks for an exchange program, and I didn't show up because I was in the middle of a binge, a 3-day binge, and they were calling hospitals and police stations and trying to figure out where I was. And he got on the plane anyway. Thank goodness. He got on the plane anyway. So that was my rock bottom. I knew I needed to change something. So that was 5 years ago. It was 5 years ago. So I was desperate. I was in and out of AA at that point already, but it wasn't helping. And so I heard on Joe Rogan that there was this stuff called Ayahuasca that could help me. And I'm like, I'll try anything. My mom was going to mortgage her house to send me down to Peru until my son, who knew I was having problems, obviously, researched and found this place in Florida called Soul Quest. So I said, all right, I'm in. My mom lent me some money, and my son is like, I'll go with you too. So he came with me, and I went and asked for some relief from my addiction and from releasing the resentment that I had against my father, which was a daily resentment. I was really angry at him over a falling out we had a couple of years before that. So yeah. I got all that, and the next month and a half, there was no compulsion to use, which was really, really helpful. I was relieved. We got back into using, went back again the third time. And that third time, somebody told me, you need to dive headfirst into a new life. And so I did. And so I started volunteering at Soul Quest. And I just never left. I just kept going back and going back and going back and volunteering and until eventually they said, okay, let's put you on the payroll. They were paying me $200 a week, and I would show up on Thursday and I would set up all the beds. I would work somewhere between 6 and 10 hours on Thursday. Usually Friday was a 20-hour day, Saturday was a 20-hour day, and then Sunday I would work 6 hours, or 6 to 8 hours, and then Monday would be cleanup. So I'd work from Thursday to Monday. I would work about 60 hours Thursday to Monday, and for $200. So that's how I got to the medicine.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about Soul Quest, because it always comes up with all my US connections. Soul Quest is a very reputable organization, as I know, and they offer not just the experience itself in a traditional way, but they have a lot of, I heard they have doctors and psychologists on site, help you with the integration part of it, and things like that. And they've been around for a long time, right? It's kind of like quite a deeply rooted organization in the US. So just talk to us a little bit about that experience. Like, why did you think it was that you needed to stay there? Like, because I also want to touch on, the reason I'm asking is that I want to touch on this one time magic potion will heal you. You just got to do one time and then come back. Because a lot of people who travel across Peru, outside their country, seeking for this medicine, they go and they just have this experience, come back, thinking that it's all done. Now they can heal all their traumas, and and operate more balanced way. But it doesn't work like that, does it? Especially when the trauma is so deep rooted and it's early onset, like a childhood trauma, right?
Right.
So,
it's not a magic juice. It's not a magic potion. And here's the thing. So first of all, if you go to a weekend retreat, you drink Friday night, Saturday night, or maybe Friday night, Saturday night, and you go home, that's definitely going to make an impact, but that's not what most people need to actually heal. It's definitely gets them on the road to healing. It gets us on the road to being able to integrate this stuff. But without a lot of integration help and without other things, that's just one aspect. It's a very big aspect. But there's, for example, if you go down to the jungle for a couple of weeks, you don't just do ayahuasca ceremonies and then they feed you and they do some yoga. They have vapor baths. They have detoxes for your liver and for your kidneys and for your lungs, and they have plant baths, and they have all kinds of different things that are meant to detoxify you and heal you and help you. And so that long period of time, that week to 2 weeks or more. I mean, I've got 2 people that are on my team that are headed down to Peru to do 60-day 2 dietas. One will be the Noya Rao, and the other one will probably be Bovensana, but they'll do all of these different detoxifications over the course of the week. So you can get a lot more out. However, you don't dig it all out. I mean, the work will never be done. We could drink ayahuasca every day for the next 5 years and still not get it all out. We have to understand that some of our traumas, we have to work with them and love them. However, the other piece of it is in the Western world, we come back to the Western world. We're not in the jungle. We're being reprogrammed and re-traumatized on a daily basis based on what we see through our phone and the television, through society. And so, we have some of that stuff creep back in. So it's going to be a 2 steps forward, 1 step back process. But these really do blow out a lot of blockages and the big ones, and it can get you to actually start to love yourself, which is a key. But we constantly have buy this car, buy this, buy these jeans. If you don't do this, if you don't look this way, if you don't act this way, then you don't fit in, and that's going to be bad. And,
we are constantly exposed to the Western way of life, where we're constantly bombarded with how things should be, how should we be around people, and what things we should possess, and how we should behave, and so on and so forth. So I understand what you mean. I think Rick Doblin has he has great insights on this as well, when it comes to having relationship with the medicine. Like, this is exactly what you're talking about, I'm guessing, that you need to build a good working relationship in respect. The foundation of it needs to be that you need to respect these plants and also be open to working with them and treat them in the most traditional way. Because also a lot of people I know, and I heard that they come to these retreats to have a trip and have a good time and have just some visions. They come for visions. But I really like the way you said that you can be drinking ayahuasca every day for 5 years and still nothing would heal. This is a really powerful insight, and I think it's timely for us to really talk about this. So when you, especially with Pachamama Sanctuary, because you're the founder, which we'll get into that in a minute, how it came about. But when you work with people in general, do you pick people that are open-minded and willing to work, or is it something like you don't know, it's just like almost like a gamble, like you can take on people unexpectedly, they'll really go into it, commit and do the work, and then you take on another one that you think they're going to do this work, and suddenly things change and shift and it becomes more painful and worse than it actually before. So those are the things that I'm always questioning and looking into, and the studies that also now out there in the world, there's so much research and studies are going on. How do you feel about that in terms of building that strong relationship and also having the open mind to really work with these medicines, right?
So as far as who comes to the sanctuary and who sits with this medicine, I kind of put them into three groups. You got people who are definitely coming here for the right reasons. You got people who are definitely coming here for the wrong reasons. And then you've got people who, it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell. A lot of them, it's obvious. And so people that are coming here for the wrong reasons, I turn most of them away. Mm-hmm. Occasionally, I work with one of them here or there because I see something in them. I hear something that they say that triggers me to believe that this could give them the desire to be here for the right reasons, or they're just saying they're coming here for the wrong reasons because they don't want to sound uncool or whatever. They don't want to sound weak, or they don't want to sound lame, or whatever society tells them that they might be if they, do this thing in this way. Yeah. And most of the time it works out. I go on my intuition on that one. As a matter of fact, I can't really think of a single case when it didn't, but it's hard to tell that because we've got, hundreds of members and I'm not in touch with everybody anymore, which makes me sad, but it is what it is. We have a big team. The people that are coming here for the right reasons, they are just attracted, and makes up the majority of who come here. Then there's certain people that I just don't know. I'm unsure. They say they're coming here for the right reasons. I believe them. Then they don't have any visions all weekend. And I ask them and they're like, no, I've been following the dieta. But then I find out that they told another one of the facilitators that they smoked some cannabis on the way here, which means that they were a daily smoker, which means, of course, those medicines don't really like each other. So,
So there's two threads that I want to touch on here. One of them is, how do you feel about having all this responsibility on you as an individual? Because you just said you got to somehow trust your intuition, go with your intuition in deciding on, these people. Like you said, you come up with the three categories. I can definitely resonate with that. Talking to many different shamans and facilitators in this space, and it's almost like that you guys need to be carrying this burden of you trusting your intuition, and knowing that we're just also human beings and we have our bad and good days. And how do you feel under this weight of you? Is this the only way that we can work with these plant medicines? That I know in the traditional indigenous way, that's why the shaman exists, right? Because the shaman dedicated their whole life in this work. So they bear the responsibility and they bear the implications and responsibility of everything that can come from this. How do you feel as a person when this weight is on your shoulders and you got to, under pressure of making the right decision?
Honestly, I don't feel any pressure. I don't feel any pressure. I trust the medicine so much and I trust that, there's so many examples that I can give you about how I've been divinely guided and divinely gifted, to be able to handle this. It'll blow your mind, some of the miracles that have happened. So I genuinely, I tap in and trust my intuition, and I trust the medicine. So it's like, I trust the medicine with my life, with my kids' lives. I trust the medicine for putting me on this path. I just know that this medicine is so intelligent and the spirit is so vibrant that it would not put me in harm's way. It would not create a situation that was going to be horrible for the community, for itself, for this work.
Yeah, and you trust that because of your own personal relationship with the medicine. Is it because you trust it so much on this level it's because you've committed and you put all the work in, and you have respect. Because this is what I'm always hearing when it comes to the indigenous way of practicing the medicine, as opposed to the Western way. Now, as you know, we have a lot of institutions, like we have MAPS UK, we have a lot of organizations in the US, in Canada, and Europe and other countries, that Imperial College in London, for example. A lot of these psychedelic assisted therapies are now undertaken, and a lot of data and research is collected. Still, you know, they are collecting all this data on the positive impacts. I'm seeing a separation here. I'm seeing truly people who are working with these medicines, seeing them as an intelligent being, including Dennis McKenna. I mean, I love his lectures on plant medicines, how he says they are these intelligent beings and they're here to show us and teach us. They're teachers, they're teaching plants. And then we have the Western
plants are talking
science.
to us. This is not a metaphor.
Right.
He says the plants are talking to us. This is not a metaphor.
Yeah, right. And then we have the Western model. We have the clinics. People undergo these processes with a sitter and a clinically trained psychologist. This is what we're seeing now. It's emerging very strongly, and I see it everywhere. And I'm kind of seeing a separation, and I'm really worried how we're going to merge the two together. Have the scientific understanding, but also how do you maintain what you're doing, that initial, the spiritual connection with them, and the respect, and how we see those. What are your thoughts on that?
So I feel so when I work with people with integration, a lot of people want to focus solely on their traumas and healing their pain and getting into their emotions. And other people want to focus on their life and what they can change about their life in the 3D, and what actionable things that they can do to actually make a change. Mm-hmm. And if one of them is the action person, I pull them over towards the emotional. If somebody is on the emotional side, I make them start making changes in their life. It's not one or the other. It can't be one or the other. We live in non-duality. They both have good and bad. But what we're doing is, so my son is a psychology major at Boston University, pretty well-respected school. And he's going to finish with his master's in psychology, and then he's going to go for his PhD before going to medical school, and he's going to study ayahuasca through our sanctuary. By then we'll have our licensing, and he'll be able to do it right through. And there's several good schools in Boston, between Tufts and Northeastern, Harvard, BU, and a few others. There's a lot of really good schools there. So he's going to go and pitch his PhD program to that, because there is an intersection, and to ignore one side or the other is to ignore all the things. There's people, I know you've probably come in contact with them, that say, I've got this problem with my skin, or I've got this virus, or I've got this parasite, or whatever, and they're trying to continually go to shamans and cure it with herbs and natural remedies, and they're just not getting better. This is where modern medicine, you can take one pill and get rid of that parasite. They have a function, and it's not one or the other. It's how we can combine the two.
Work together, bring them together. Mm-hmm.
Right.
I understand. So how do you feel about, I'm not sure if you're following right now, every day I'm hearing a state or a place legalizing these medicines. I mean, I'm talking about psychedelics as in psilocybin also, and psilocybin mostly, and MDMA assisted therapies and other ones, like ketamine even, I heard, for addiction. So how do you feel about where we're going? And also the psychedelic renaissance is actually happening right now, because we're in such an interesting times. And do you also notice that with the post-pandemic era, a lot of people are turning to psychedelics right now? Do you feel that?
I do. When you're inside of a movement, it looks a lot bigger than it really is. I wish that I could see it from the other side. I wish that I could see it from the other side. Like, I have such a bubble around me that it feels like this giant wave, and I know that it's growing. Like, there's articles and things in major newspapers and on major channels on television, and I know that it's happening. I just wonder how big it actually is at this point. I don't know, but I do appreciate that we have different doctors and psychologists and people coming at it from all kinds of different angles, because the more we learn about it. So I did an interview with somebody who was a PhD student at Harvard about the serotonergic system, and she was diving into the different molecules that scientists were building to see what they did, because they all had this ring of six, and the DMT molecule and the psilocybin, and then there's the mescaline molecule, and there's all these different things, right? But I did a lot of I had a long conversation with her, and she brought a lot of really good things up. And to have people smart like her, and smart like Rick Doblin, and smart like all the people at Johns Hopkins, like studying all kinds of different angles, the more we can learn about it, the more of a complete picture that we can actually see. That being said, money's a thing. And so there's people that are concerned with the motivation behind maps. And people that are concerned with there's going to be some big money that's going to kind of checkmate the whole movement and say, if you don't go through us, then you can't do it anymore, and what that's going to look like. And so I just divert to trust. I just trust the medicine. I just trust it.
Yeah, this is great that you brought this up, and I can almost feel that. I can tell you I am outside of the bubble, but I am also inside somehow, but I'm more observing from the outside of that bubble, and I can see a lot of work is undertaken right now in terms of a lot of clinicians, doctors, PhDs coming together, scientists, neuroscientists coming together, and it's almost at a scary level that there is millions of bits of information out there any given moment online that people can read. Somehow like it's okay, because then we learn, like you said, the PhD lady that you had a conversation with, sometimes like it's good for us to learn the scientific, what it does to our brain, and the receptors and the everything, the mechanics behind it. It's good to learn, but I'm also a little bit worried about the agenda. But then like you said, we're just going to see the unfolding in the next couple of years. I think we'll get a more clear picture of where it's going. I mean, even the most respected trauma studies, doctors that I've been following, because my background is also in the childhood trauma initially, and I followed so many doctors, 40 years of investment in studies, and even they have turned to MDMA or some level of psychedelic assisted therapies in their studies, which is, for me, that's like incredible to watch, because they are really old school people that came from the 80s, the 70s, and really put a lot of time in the somatic experiencing of the trauma, and because obviously we know why, because in the 50s of what happened to psychedelics, and it's illegalized and all that. So my favorite thing is that the revolution of the Renaissance. So a lot of people are saying that we are now in the Renaissance of psychedelics, and that we don't know where it's going ideally, but in 2 years there is a lot of talks that microdosing can be like a very normal practice, just a supplement, instead of, how people go and buy supplements, vitamins. This could be the next thing on the shelves. But I'm also very concerned, because I'm very much interested in the settings, and I also know how much these psychedelics the benefits can alter if we don't respect, and if we don't use them in the right settings with the intention, how do you feel about that? Because if it's available on the shelves, and then people who have no interest in the spiritual connection, or no interest in all of the traditional way, and they just want to optimize their health, they just want to increase their increase and all that, how do you feel that now that we don't even have a framework? I know there's a lot of studies undertaking right now to create some level of framework, but we're still not there, and it's coming too fast. A lot of people are already talking about microdosing, even people that had no macro experiences just yet, that haven't even connected with the psychedelics. So what are your thoughts on that?
So I had a long discussion with Claudia Schwartz-Plasch, who she did her PhD on the legalization and application and availability of psychedelics as therapies. She studied in Boston. She went from MIT to Harvard, I think. I had a long conversation with her about that. And there's a lot of different aspects when it comes to this, because these are powerful medicines. These are powerful medicines. And just making them just blanket, like making them available over the counter, is not really the right answer. Also, not making them available, and that's also not the right answer. So education was one of her major points. Education was a huge point. Educating people on what they are. She talked about having them available through like over the counter and available through different doctors. And unfortunately, there's benefits and drawbacks. And I see benefits and drawbacks all over the place when it comes to it. But what it really comes down to is it safe for the person? Well, physically, you would have to choke to death on mushrooms to die from them, so that's fine. Does it create schizophrenia or bipolar in people? Well, the statistics show that it's about the same in people that have used psychedelics and who haven't. It's just that they trigger the onset of the symptoms of schizophrenia. So if you're going to have schizophrenia and you take LSD at the age of 29 and you're not displaying symptoms, you could permanently now have symptoms. And that's a bummer, because you just gave away a day, a week, a month, a year of your life to these symptoms. Now you're medicated, and you're disconnecting, disassociating. As far as microdosing goes, I don't feel like anybody needs a flood dose if they're going to utilize microdosing, because the idea is to stay under the threshold, so you don't actually experience the feelings and the effects of the medicine. So set and setting don't really apply in that case. And if you can get your dosage right, and you just take it every few days, the idea is that it's going to get your cortisol, oxytocin, melatonin, serotonin, and dopamine flowing properly, and your synapses firing properly, so that you can use your creative mind, so that you can actually experience things like joy and sadness in a healthy way. And so that you can actually utilize logic and emotion together, because when we have that cortisol, it locks it up around the hypothalamus, and we're always in our logical mind until something triggers us. Now we're in our emotional mind, and we don't want to go back to logic, right? If it can keep these chemicals flowing, and I think that's a very healthy and very positive thing. But I don't agree with any long-term solution that means taking something every day. I don't care if it's Lexapro in an SSRI, or microdosing mushrooms, or utilizing cannabis. If you have to use it every day indefinitely, something else has got to be done. That's maintenance, and that's no different than taking an SSRI. Just because it's a microdose and you want to feel crunchy and granola, that doesn't mean that that's okay. It means you got to get into your traumas. It means you have some stuff deeper that you need to pull out. That's when we need to start talking flood doses, or MDMA, or ketamine, or ayahuasca, or ibogaine, to be able to like really awaken yourself. But I think that I don't think that they're dangerous on their own if you're going to take microdoses in any form, as long as you're not going to be relying on them for a long period of time.
Yeah. I heard a conversation from one of the doctors that I follow, Dr. Bezo. He talked about, he was talking to someone about therapy and healing trauma, because he's got one of the most famous books, Body Keeps the Score. And he did a lot of research and study on how the early attachments, the onset of childhood trauma, can become the imprint of your perceived reality as an adult. And then it really affects your decision-making behavior and all the rest of it that we know of. And he said, I think the guy that he was talking to, he said, ultimately what we want is that we want everyone to use psychedelics so that we can have a world that is shifted in consciousness, and that we can stop the pain, the suffering, and everything else. And what I love that Dr. Bezo said is that there is a saying that pain makes the world go round, like meaning hate. Also, the hate makes the world go round. He said that won't be possible even with psychedelics, because the way humans are wired, they need to be triggered in that pain in order to look for equanimity, equilibrium. They need to look for that trigger, the pain, that deep, a rock bottom, or something that could trigger something for them to seek. I found this really, really interesting. So one of the things in education, in psychedelics, or any type of healing, or anything that we can do to improve our wellness, I highly think that the education part is so important right now, because he said with the psychedelics, like a lot of people talk about psychedelics switching off your default mechanic, the default mode, and then you then go into your trauma with courage, bravery. You'll go to the places where you wouldn't go normally with psychedelics. But what he said was actually, it doesn't work like that. Psychedelics amplify the pain, the trauma, because they bring it to your attention. That's why it's hard to do the work. In that becomes your creative space, where you then given a choice to look in, be with it, and heal whatever comes up. I found this to be very profound, meaning that psychedelics don't just magically heal you and make you go through a paradigm shift. However, they amplify your original state of vigilance, hypervigilance, and your traumatic state, so that you have the courage to look into it. This was really interesting. I think this is a very perspective than what I've heard previously from many people who works with psychedelics, that I found there's a truth in it. Because if you I'm sure you see this all the time with your participants that come to your retreat, that the first initial ceremony is always them going back into their childhood trauma, right? The very initial root traumas. It's very common, right?
It's common, yes.
And the psychedelic really amplifies this experience more and more intense, and then intensity gets so much that they cannot handle most of the time, and then that's hence why they are somatically triggered in their body. They feel, they move around, or like they become little toddlers trying to kind of work with this thing, and what is this thing that's happening. So the reason I wanted to mention this is that a lot of people think in the psychedelic space, where they're doing a lot of studies, but one thing we're missing out is here, that I also believe that we need to go back into that experience, doesn't matter how painful, doesn't matter how horrible, and create maybe a new perspective from being in there, right? And in the future, going forward, like making it available for everyone. Okay, let's heal the world. Everyone should take it. it doesn't work like that, right? So I just wanted to take your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so as far as, digging into those traumas, I think that what it does is it takes away our ability to be dishonest with ourselves about what actually happened, and to see more than just the one angle that we were looking at it through this very narrow lens. It broadens the lens and it shows us the whole picture instead of one little tiny piece. And it shows it to us with brutal honesty. And then we can actually accept and absorb that impact of what our part in it was, so we can release the resentment for other people and then promise ourselves better behavior in the future. What was the next thing that you asked?
The concept of that everybody should take psychedelics in the world, that we should all heal every single trauma, and we should shift into the fifth dimension and start transcending everything.
I like the 3D. I like the 3D, and I think a lot of people do. If you believe the Bible as a work of inspirational teachings, I think this is heaven right now, where we are today. This is heaven, or it's hell if we choose to make it hell, right? I think that psychedelics can help every single person to take them, but I don't think that every single person should take them. They're not right for everybody. They're not right for everybody. To give my grandmother psychedelics, it would not end well. She would not handle it well. I don't think that it's almost like in the Matrix. They say, when they pull out Neo, they say, normally we don't wake people up that are past a certain age.
Wow.
And so I really believe that it'll help a lot of people, but I think that we need to start with really getting it out to people between the ages of 30 and 50 and start working our way down. Because those are the ones that we got abused. We had the parents there's that middle segment of society of the ages where parents were from the early 70s to the mid 80s, right? They were the ones that were abused really badly when they were kids 20 years before that. So like the mid 50s, the mid 60s, you put on there this happy face outside of the house, but inside the house, you had this patriarchal father, this mother who was subservient and who usually was abused. And then the family stayed together in all this fighting and turmoil that nobody else knew, and they weren't allowed to talk about because they had to present a certain image. And there was all this societal pressure, and then they wilded out. They went to Woodstock, and then they had kids, and they're like, and they didn't know how to be a parent, because they definitely weren't going to be that way. Yeah. They weren't going to be the same way as their parents. And so that generation who went to Woodstock and had kids, right? I'm the kids from that generation. A lot of us were abused. And a lot of us that don't really talk about it were abused. The kids today, taking away their iPads, abusive. You know what I mean? They don't know what it's like to get your nose broken by getting a pan smashed in your face.
Yeah.
So
it has changed a lot. The perception of abuse and trauma has changed a lot since, Also, just one last thing that I wanted to take your thoughts on with psychedelics and what you just told me about. Do you feel that a lot of people, because of the shift that we're going through, like you said, because that was the generation, and now there's this new emerging generation, and us also, I'm probably similar generation to you, and then we have these new generations that are really young, and they're really kind of, they're so with it, they get it, they understand everything with the psychedelics and the processes. They're very open to it. I see younger people are very much open to psychedelics, and they're much more humble with it somehow. It's almost like natural to them than maybe one generation before. And now going forward with the psychedelics, as I said, do you feel like we also attract a lot of people who just coming for the enlightenment? Because like you said, the 3D is the real deal. And the work is, it's almost like, I have my favorite story of the Zen masters, where imagine Zen masters, the discipline they put in to become enlightened, right? The path of enlightenment. And then after years of discipline, when their students ask them, so what is the secret to life, or how do we enlighten? And as an answer, they just chuckle and have some tea. This is my favorite story. It's true. It all comes down to embracing the 3D, right? The simplistic life that we hear, like breathe and just be here, be in the body and accept and be here. And so we're seeing a lot of people seeking enlightenment, levitation, transcendence, and just want to connect to the spirit world quickly. I'm observing a lot of increase in the interest in astrology, tarot, numerology, 5D, all these things you probably see as well. And do you have like people coming to your retreat wanting that quick fix and enlightenment and levitation? Do you get that? And how do you deal with that?
I do. And I just nod and smile. And
like
I know
Zen masters.
Well, it's spiritual bypassing is what it is. All of that stuff is spiritual bypassing. Focusing all your energy on crystals or on, the 5D and all of this stuff. Like, let's see like what triggers you. Let's see what makes you feel terrible, and like use that to peer into your soul and dig out something so that you can just be happy. Because if you're seeking something to be happy, whether it be the stars or tarot or rocks, then you're missing the point. You're missing the point. So all of these things are lovely. I love crystals. I've got them, but they're because they're pretty rocks. I think they're pretty, and I think they're awesome. I like them. I pull a card every once in a while because I enjoy it, because I think it's fun. To get focused on like this, like transcendence and the 5D and that's, to me, that's, you're running away from heaven. You're running away from heaven. That stuff will come. This the sun doesn't go down. It just spins around it's just an illusion. The sun doesn't go down. We get to transcend when it's our time. So let's enjoy the grass and the air and the snow and connection with other human beings here in the 3D.
This is where it's all at, right?
This is where the good stuff is.
The connections, the meaningful conversations like this, and also seeing psychedelics as a tool, but not means to levitation or enlightenment, or because I think one of the biggest fear that people have that I observe is the fear of being stuck in this body, and doesn't matter how much we seek, we're not going to get the answers. We're not going to find out what happens after death. We're just going to have to live and accept and be happy here within these bodies that we've given. And when they come to your retreat, like some of these participants, and they talk about their experiences as also, like we call it the Messiah complex, where they seriously believe that they are not human beings, they're from another planet, and they reincarnated in this body, and they have a mission. When they go into that, how do you handle those kind of situations as well? That would be really interesting to observe.
Honestly, I haven't really had a lot of people come here for that. I'm sure it'll come. Honestly, I was down in Soul Quest. There wasn't a lot of people. They don't generally gravitate towards this medicine. Interestingly enough, I see them in the community, but not around at least our retreats. And I did not see him at Soul Quest very much either. There was one, and that was a very interesting experience. She's wonderful, but a little bit of magical thinking, I think, and that's okay. Like, life's magic, but yeah, no, it doesn't really occur.
Okay.
It doesn't really occur.
All right.
I think that it's because there's a little bit of fear there, that some of these, I think it's that ego kind of protecting. I think the ego keeps people away from the medicine when they're not ready to have the foundations that they've built a whole bunch of their life on be shattered.
Yeah, of course. Somehow, doesn't matter how asleep the person, in terms of asleep as a term to say, not so conscious of what they're doing in terms of like spiritual bypassing. Somehow they unconsciously within them, they know that they don't go there, right? It's just kind of something is protecting them, and they're in this bubble. And then there is this a lot of experiences that I have with people in positive psychology, affirmations, keep it positive, and also, which is great, but when it comes to really digging into that trauma and dealing with this pain and working with it, it doesn't work so well when you're overly positively, positive.
No. If somebody does something that makes you unhappy, you saying, well, I'm just going to wish them love and light, is avoiding that pain point. And that pain point is where the opening of the soul happens, where you can look inside and see, what is this?
Yeah.
And if you ignore it and you avoid it, you're doing yourself a disservice.
Yeah, this is beautiful. Okay, thank you so much. We're going to wrap this conversation up, but before we go, let's talk about your Pachamama Sanctuary, your plans for the future, what's happening in your world, and what's next for you. And also, how can people find you and how can people connect with you? I'm sure we're going to be sharing a lot of links to your website and everything, but just so that listeners can listen from you, what's next for you?
Sure. So to just go back to at the end when I started working and showing up and diving headfirst into a new way of life at SoulQuest, I was there for a little less than a year, and I was sitting in and helping in ceremonies for a while. Then I left there. Actually, I didn't leave. They asked me to leave because that was my last relapse, and they found out about it and they said, you got to go. And I said, okay. So I went back to my life, and I was, doing things, and somebody called me and says, hey, can you help me organize some retreats in New England? I resisted, and I said, okay, fine, I'll try one. Our first one was in this very room, actually, with 5 people that paid, and there was 7 of us on the mat. Our mats were actually like couch cushions with like sheets wrapped around them, and it was so ghetto, but it was beautiful too. And then, one thing led to another, led to bigger ceremonies, led to me flying back and forth from Florida, led to me moving here to this facility in southern New Hampshire. And then eventually what ended up happening was we outgrew this place. And so through a whole series of miracles, we ended up being able to purchase a property not far from here. Now, this is somebody who 2 years ago relapsed his last time. A year before that, I was like in trap houses, using hard drugs with unsavory people. After a decade of that, my credit was demolished. I really didn't have that much money because working with Pachamama, I don't take a salary. I don't take any money. I since the beginning, I've taken about $1,200. It's because I know that in the future it'll eventually support me, but as of right now, I don't earn anything. So no money, terrible credit. All of a sudden, this property just lands in my lap, and I'm like, yeah, well, this is a perfect property, and it's a perfect property. But how am I going to get it financed? The very next day, somebody shows up and says, well, if you want some help, I'm a commercial real estate investor broker. I can find you the money. It's no problem. And so we're moving into this place in 2 weeks, a week and a half, actually. It's 13,000 square feet. It's on 31 acres, 16 bedrooms, 10 bathrooms. And it used to be a wedding venue. And what this space is it's not for Derek, and it's not mine. What it is it's community space. So yes, we're going to have retreats there. Yes, I'm going to live there. But the people in the community, they have a lot of gifts. They have gifts from art to yoga to meditation to breath work. to music, to landscaping, to whatever. And so the space is going to be open in varying degrees for different people to be able to come and share their gifts with the rest of the community. Because our priorities, number one, are community, number two is integration, and number three is the medicine, right? Now, the medicine brings us together, it unblocks stuff, but without integration, it's just some experience.
Yeah.
And the community is the foundation, the bedrock on which integration lays on. How we communicate with each other, how we learn to communicate with people in a positive way, how we actually learn empathy and compassion for brothers and sisters that we just went through this unbelievable experience with. It was rough and difficult and beautiful and horrible all at the same time. So the community space is going to, eventually we'll have just open hours for people to come and hang out and meet up. It can be a meetup location. I intend, something near and dear to my heart, is to open a free music school for children in the area that can't afford it. My highest job is to create a blank canvas as big as possible so that the people in the community can come and bring their paints and decide what it's going to look like, because I get to just watch it unfold and help people create things, like get them the support and the resources, and then they get to make this community what it is, because I'm not the community. This isn't about Derek. I'm just the guy who's creating this blank canvas for the community to come together and be beautiful. And
that's amazing. Wow, that's so beautiful. Yeah. And yes, I have seen your the place that you're going into soon. It looks dream. It's a dream, honestly, and I'm so happy that this is unfolding in the way that it is. And do you think that communities are the only thing going forward that's going to hold us together in this post-pandemic, this uncertain times, these interesting wild times that we're in now? Do you think we are finally getting it, that the community is where it's all at, that we need to work towards, this type of living?
I think that it's a beautiful thing that's flourishing right now because of what's going on, people helping other people and people coming together in a strong way. But I think the thing that's going to save us as a society is, number one is love and kindness. And number two, the unbelievable resilience of the human spirit. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much. So any last words for our listeners? Really, really enjoyed this conversation, and I'm sure we're going to have a second part maybe in the future with your projects going forward. So any last words from you for our listeners? If you need help, if you need to talk to somebody, that's my favorite thing to do. You can call me. My number will be around. You can just pick up the phone and call me. You can message me on Facebook. You don't have to have come or anything like that. If you need some help, call me. I have a lot of connections. I have a big network, but I can be here and listen.
Beautiful. I think that's what we need going forward as human beings. We need to be connected on a soul level, be heard, be seen, valued. And this is beautiful. Thank you so much, Derek. Really enjoyed this and wishing you all the best going forward. And we'll be in touch very soon.
Thanks so much, Susan. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for being here, and I will see you guys on the next one. Bye for now. Thank you so much for joining us. Psychedelic Conversations podcast is designed to educate, inform, and expand awareness. For more information, please head over to psychedelicconversations.com. You can also share with your friends or leave a review so that we can reach more people. You can also join us in our private Facebook group to keep the conversation going. This show is for information purposes only, and it is not intended to provide mental health or medical advice. Thanks for listening.